رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن اهتدى بهديه واستنى بسنته إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. We begin with what remains from the chapter that deals with the description, the format, and how to pray the salat, and what is reprehensible in prayer. And this is known as makruhatu as-salat. And makruhatu as-salat, the things that are not liked, the things that are not recommended for you to do in salat. So we studied in the beginning what is a must, the arkan, the wajibat. We studied the sunan. So what is the sunan? The sunnah is anything that is recommended and you will be rewarded for doing, but it would not impact, it would not affect your salat if you do not do it. Such as raising the hands. This is sunnah. So if you do not raise your hand, that would be makruh, meaning that you're not sinful for not doing it, but you lose great reward from Allah Azza wa Jal because you've left out something that the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam used to do. So the things that are reprehensible in prayer, as mentioned in the book, are as follows. One, and we've mentioned this in the Sunan, a lot, if not all Muslims, believe that it is an essential part of Salat to recite a surah after the Fatiha. And this is not true. So if I say Allahu Akbar and I begin my prayer, recite the Fatiha till the end, غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين, and I go for ruku', Allahu Akbar. There's nothing wrong. Shaykh, but you did not recite a surah. This is the first rak'ah. Yes, you have to repeat the prayer again. Your prayer is invalid. No, the prayer is valid totally. But you have done something that is makruh. What is it makruh for? Because it was never reported that the Prophet had skipped it, alayhi salatu wasalam. Nevertheless, it is not mandatory. Number two, repeating the surah al-Fatiha in the same rak'ah. And this, unfortunately, is done by a lot of the Muslims, especially when they fall victim to OCD. And you see people do this repeatedly. I've prayed next to so many people saying, and you can hear it in the congregational prayer. He's next to you and he's making himself audible so that he would hear himself and try to fight the shaitan. And he says, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alhamdulillah. And he doesn't stutter. He just simply is not confident. Even if he finishes the surah, shaitan comes to him and says, repeat it again. So he repeats it again and again. I prayed once next to a person who did this, and in the middle of the prayer, he broke it and went to perform wudu. Having said that, a person must recite the Fatiha only once. Repeating it is makruh. It's not part of the sunnah. Does it nullify my prayer? The vast majority of scholars say that it does not nullify your prayer, but it is something that is disliked and against the sunnah. Now, having said that, when does it become permissible to repeat the Fatiha? This is permissible when some people may contemplate upon it. It was reported that some of the Salaf would repeat the same verse over and over again, contemplating on it. So if someone recites the Fatiha and he loves the Fatiha and he goes and says again, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, and he contemplates on all praise is due to Allah Azza wa Jal, and he feels that Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen is actually filling the whole universe, and he enjoys position, of course, not leading the people on, but rather in night prayer or so. Some scholars, like Sheikh bin Baz, say that this is permissible, inshallah. The third reprehensible act in prayer is turning one's face slightly during prayer without a reason. Now, some of the reasons that you may turn your face slightly is when you are in salat and you get whispers of shaitan. Refuge in Allah from the shaitan 3 times. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Then spit 3 times to your left. This is from the sunnah. Now, if there is someone standing next to you, I wouldn't advise this, because then it would have seemed that you're doing that towards him, and you don't want to have a fight after salat, maybe even during salat. So what to do? The thing is to try to do that to your left foot or underneath your left foot. Okay. And the second position, or the second reason you may need to look around, is if you're praying and there's a child in the room, and if you're a mother, and this happens often with the mothers, so she's praying and the child is there, maybe climbing the cupboard or doing something that might be dangerous. She does this. This is okay. This slight movement to the left, to the right, no problem in that, in order to look. You're praying and all of a sudden something moves to your side and you look at this, maybe it's a snake or a scorpion. So you have to look, rather than saying, no, I'm not gonna look, I'm gonna have khushu' in salat, and then you end up in a funeral house or dead. So this is part of the things that is makruh in salat. Now, we mentioned in the things that nullify your salat is when you turn totally with your side like this, or give your back to the qibla. Then this is totally invalidate your prayer. Number 4, part of the things that is makruh during salat is what most Muslims do, and that is they close their eyes in prayer. So when they pray, they do this. What are you doing? He says, Sheikh, I've noticed that when I close my eyes, my concentration, my khushu', my submissiveness is off the chart. Way, way good, alhamdulillah. So I'd like to maintain this. Now the problem is that when you do such a thing, sunnah. So he says, yeah, I know it's not sunnah, but I find my heart in it. So I gain more khushu', and this is not permissible. Not permissible in the sense that this is going to lead you to follow the footsteps of shaitan. What footsteps of shaitan? Number 5, placing one's arms up to the elbows on the floor during prostration. What does that mean? Yes, to raise your elbows up. But if you fail and you put your elbows and your arm and your hand on the ground, you're like a lion or a dog when they sit on the ground like this. And this is something that the Prophet ﷺ prohibited and said you should not prostrate like this. Why would anyone do that? 1, laziness. 2, sometimes it is so tight, easier to place their elbows on the ground. 3, the sunnah is to yani, make your elbows and biceps away from your body, like this, as if you're spreading your wings. If it's too tight and you're abusing those to your left and right, then you should do this and put your knees, that is, you're not a camel, put your elbows to your thighs, but not place them on the ground. Number 6, making many. So in prayer, some schools of thought restrict the movements into 3. After that, it invalidates your prayer, but this is not authentic. Movement in prayer can be mandatory. If you see a scorpion or a snake while praying, you must kill it before it harms you. And it can be recommended. So if I'm in prayer and I feel that my shoulder is itching me, and I don't itch it, I don't, remove this itch, and I'll finish the salat and then immediately do this. And if you ask me, what did the Imam recite in the first and second rak'ah? I don't know. I wasn't actually concentrating because this one was killing me. So go ahead and scratch it. Sometimes you're in prayer and your mobile rings. So it is recommended to turn it off, rather than make every single Tom, Dick, and Harry in the masjid engaged with the ringtone and not concentrating in their salat, especially is prevailing in so many masjids. May Allah Azza wa Jal guide them. Number 7, placing one's hands over one's waist on both sides. So this is putting your hands like this. This is one way of doing it, but I don't think anybody would do this during prayer. So it's most likely doing this. So instead of putting the right on the left hand like this, like we've explained before, people sometimes do this and sometimes they do this. So they go to extreme and put their hands on their waists, and this is not recommended. Number 8, throwing one's rope or shirt over one's shoulders and letting loose on the sides. This is debatable, or to explain it is not that crystal clear. Some say it is when you're totally undressed and you dress yourself with one piece of cloth. So it's like a mummy. You wrap it around your waist, and then when it comes to, so now you are actually covered with one piece of cloth, and this is loose from the sides. The possibility of it being loose all over and falling down is there. Maybe it will, maybe it won't, but it's always best to be careful when you put on your clothes that you put it well so that it would not fall down. By the way, yesterday I was praying, and when I was leaving the masjid, I came across one of the brothers who was sitting, was exposed. And people, I don't know how they pray like this. His shirt went up, his trousers, he was a little bit chubby, and his trousers went down, and half of his buttocks was, you can see it. It's repulsive. So while he was prostrating, I had to pull down his shirt to try and cover it. Of course, I know the feeling that he probably would have wanted to kill me if he wasn't praying, but who cares? This is a masjid and your awrah is exposed to everyone. Before the imam in congregational prayers, and this happens a lot. Some people are so keen on moving to the next pillar that the moment the imam says Allah, the guy is on the floor prostrating. Akhi, your imam is still up, he's still going down slowly. They don't wait, and this is wrong. To mimic your imam to follow him exactly is reprehensible, is makruh. So when the imam is going to ruku', you're going with him, and you say Allahu Akbar, and you're going with him. Sami Allahu liman hamidah, step by step. This is makruh. What you should do, according to the sunnah, is the companion says, we prayed with the Prophet ﷺ, and none of us used to bend his back until the forehead of the Prophet ﷺ touched the ground. So even if the Prophet says Allahu Akbar, they would not move until he touched. Side by side with the imam is not permissible. This is not recommended, makruh. Going ahead of your imam is prohibited. And the most authentic opinion, if someone does this intentionally, if your imam is old and grumpy like myself, and when he says Allahu Akbar, he slowly moves down because he's not fit, he's not agile, and you immediately see that he's going down slowly, but you immediately go for sujood before him. If you do this deliberately, your prayer is invalid. So this is a imam, not before him, because this should be included, this point should be included in the things that nullify your prayer, invalidate your prayer. Number 10, clasping one's fingers together, doing this. Some scholars said that this before the iqamah is makruh, and after the iqamah is makruh, and so is cracking your fingers is makruh. But doing this during prayer is definitely makruh. Doing it after prayer is not makruh, because the Prophet had done that alayhi salatu wasalam himself. So there's no problem in that. And doing it before prayer as well is, there's nothing wrong in that. In the actual prayer, yes, this is makruh, this is disliked, not recommended to do. Number 11, turning one's hair or clothes. I don't know what turning is, but in Arabic it is to fold one's hair or clothes. And this would be understood if someone has long hair. Nowadays it's not it's not something nice to have long hair, but in the past this was a sign of chivalry, and men used to do this, and all men used to do this actually. Nowadays it's a sign of feminism. Yani if a man or imitating disbelievers and rock stars and whatever, and Muslims don't do this anymore. It is against the sunnah to fold. If you have a long hair and it's down, it is against the sunnah to go and fold it and put it in a ponytail, for example. Why? Because as Imam Nawawi and other scholars say, that the sunnah is when you bow and prostrate, it bows and prostrates with you. So don't tie it up and fold it. As for the clothes, I recommend it. What about if my trousers are below my ankles? Well, this is haram whether you're praying or not. But if you're praying, then it is recommended that you fold it so that you pray without doing something haram. Wouldn't this be falling under the prohibition of folding your clothes? The answer is no, because this is for a reason, and it's a legitimate reason. Number 12, praying when food is present. Well, this is not only when food is present, also when you are fighting the urge to answer the call of nature. So this is makruh food, and as you're serving food, Asr Iqama is called, and you're starving. In this case, start eating, because if you go to pray without eating, you'll be preoccupied with the food, with your hunger, and you will not be able to pray well. Likewise, if you are fighting the call of nature, this would lead you to not thinking straight, not being able to concentrate while praying. And this is something that Islam does not recommend. And this is why Islam looks at the conclusion. If I'm a judge and I have a hearing to make a sentence against someone or in favor of someone, and I come to the courtroom with the urge of going to answer the call of nature, or I have a diarrhea, or I have stomachache, how would this impact my judgment? Negatively. So it is highly recommended that I do not attend or adjourn it. Likewise, if I'm starving. Likewise, if I'm agitated and angry. I had a fight with my wife this morning just before going to work, and now I am looking into a marital dispute. Definitely something messy is going to take place when I judge that, so one must not do that. Number 13, raising one's eyes to the sky, and this is most likely prohibited rather than not recommended. The Prophet ﷺ said, those people who lift their eyes to the sky. So during prayer, this is the way of being submissive, of khushu'. But if you're during prayer, do this. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wow, this is extremely bad and dangerous for you, and Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. And with this we conclude the chapter that deals with the things related to salat.